Hello everyone, it's me, Mao Mao, back again. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie The Hurricane Heist. A treasury containing about $600 million in cash faces the imminent threat of an EF5 hurricane hitting the town. All the town's residents have been evacuated before the hurricane arrives. Meanwhile, security forces guarding the treasury are very sparse. A gang of criminals quietly plans to rob the treasury. They use 3 trucks to transport the money during the hurricane. Will the gang successfully execute their plan, with all the favorable conditions in their favor? Or will greed lead them to turn against each other? Join me, Mao Mao, as we dive into today's summary. The movie begins in 1992, in Gulfport, Alabama, USA. A father, trying to protect his 2 sons, takes them to escape the hurricane. The elder son, Breeze, keeps arguing with his younger brother, distracting their father as he drives. Suddenly, a tree falls, blocking the road. The father swerves to the side, causing the car to get stuck on a large rock. Spotting a small house nearby, and with the hurricane closing in, he quickly leads his 2 sons inside for shelter. He instructs Breeze to take care of Will. While he goes to check the car stuck outside, he hurries to the car to try and remove the rock. While he hooks the cable to the crane, a violent gust causes the house to shake wildly. Afraid for his children's safety, he rushes back inside to save them. At that moment, a water tank gets blown over by the wind, tragically crushing him to death. The children cry out in anguish, but their father is gone. The hurricane grows stronger, and the wooden house cannot withstand the fierce winds. The dark clouds above swirl like a demonic figure, mocking the 2 brothers below. Time passes, and 25 years later, another hurricane, named Tammy, with equally devastating winds, hits the same town. All residents are ordered to evacuate immediately. The sheriff vows to ensure no one gets hurt by the hurricane. But is he really as righteous as he appears? Plain text. Meanwhile, the main road out of the town becomes heavily congested, due to a collision involving the treasury's money truck. To avoid further risks with the large amount of cash, Casey suggests driving ahead herself to bypass the traffic jam. After informing the 2 trucks behind, she speeds up, racing through the nearby tobacco field. At the same time, Will now a meteorologist at the National Weather Service, deploys a drone to collect data on the upcoming hurricane. He discovers that the hurricane is far worse than anticipated. Will reports that the storm clouds are swirling rapidly, and the measured pressure is down to just 985 millibars. However, his boss dismisses the data as unsubstantiated. All decisions must rely on complete readings from equipment. But by then, lives may already be lost. Meanwhile, the 3 money trucks finally arrive at the treasury. The transported cash amounts to $600 million. Most of it consists of old bills marked for removal from circulation. The treasury here is tasked with destroying the money. Coincidentally, the money shredder breaks down just as the hurricane hits. Repairs are too complicated, so the cash is temporarily stored in the vault. This might spark the greed of some malicious individuals. Sensing the danger, Officer Casey who holds the vault password, changes the password to ensure security. Soon after returning to her office, the power goes out. To repair the generator, they need Breeze. Casey plans to call Breeze, but there is no signal on her mobile phone. Casey decides to go find Breeze herself. To be cautious, she hides the iPad containing the vault password in a box of shredded paper. She has barely left when a truck pulls up in front of the treasury. A gang of criminals dressed in black and armed with tranquilizer guns exits the vehicle. They have a plan to incapacitate the guards. One security guard fires a warning shot, alerting of the intrusion. The alarm blares loudly. One of the criminals throws a flash grenade inside. As the guards rush out, they are immediately taken down. The gang seems very familiar with the treasury's layout. They move in seamlessly and breach the interior. Despite the security team using live ammunition, the criminals easily overpower them with tranquilizers. Plain text. At that moment, the security team fired furiously outside the door, but the criminals had already planted explosives on the steel door. After a loud explosion, the blast force knocked all armed guards inside the vault. Inside the treasury, Security Chief Perkins knocked out his own colleague. He was, in fact, the mastermind behind the heist. Weeks earlier, he had hackers disable the money shredder. Taking advantage of this once-in-a-millennium hurricane, he planned to loot a fortune for retirement. As residents evacuated, he gathered a group of greedy henchmen to steal $600 million. However, he showed some humanity by only using tranquilizers on the treasury staff. He then locked them all in one room. Using an old but effective method, he brainwashed the treasury director. "That's not your money," he said, "just hand it over quietly, and I guarantee everyone will stay safe." Currently, the only obstacle left was the treasury vault door. Meanwhile, Casey arrived at the electrician's house. She met Breeze's handsome younger brother, Will, there. However, she had no idea that fate would bind the three of them together. Casey successfully picked up Breeze and was on her way back. Little did they know, the treasury was already under the gang's control. Inside the treasury, a hacker used a computer to crack the vault code. He worked swiftly on the keyboard. But to their surprise, the password was incorrect. Casey had changed the password shortly before. The hacker had to reset the program, which would take 2 hours. To speed things up, they would need to find Casey and get the password. Of course, Perkins always opts for the fastest way. Outside, Casey and Breeze reached the treasury. Sensing something was wrong, Casey got out of the car with her gun to investigate. She was immediately spotted and held at gunpoint by the gang. At that critical moment, Breeze turned his car around to save her. As the two tried to escape, the hacker raised the vehicle barriers. Breeze couldn't get away and was captured by the gang. Casey ran while firing back at the criminals. At that moment, Will happened to pass by. He drove over and saved Casey from a close call. Casey told him that Breeze had been captured by the gang. Will wanted to drive straight there to rescue his brother. But Casey believed they needed Breeze to fix the backup power supply. Without electricity, they couldn't open the vault door. So, they wouldn't kill the hostage just yet. They planned to use the satellite phone in the car to call for help. Unexpectedly, the satellite equipment was also shot and damaged by the gang. The two had no choice but to go to the police station for help. But when the sheriff heard the treasury was being robbed, he showed no surprise at all. He pointed a gun at the two of them. It turned out he was one of the masterminds behind the robbery. He ordered Casey to drop her gun and remain still. He then radioed Perkins, reporting that Casey had been captured and awaited reinforcements. But Casey wouldn't sit still and wait to die. She quickly grabbed a gun off the floor and shot the sheriff. Will took the chance to shove him towards the desk. The two managed to escape the police station. At this point, Perkins's henchmen had arrived as backup. The sheriff got into his car to chase them down. On the road, he kept firing at Will's armored vehicle, but it was like an egg hitting a rock. Meanwhile, Casey kept shooting, keeping the sheriff at bay. But Casey quickly ran out of bullets and turned to Will. "I only have a gun in my pants," he joked. "That's not for careless use," he added. Seeing the slippery roads and their high speed, Will told her to fasten her seatbelt. He hit the brakes in the middle of the road. Then he dropped a steel drill bit into the ground. The sheriff's car couldn't stop in time. A violent crash flipped the car onto the ground. After rolling over countless times, the car finally came to a halt. Casey seized the opportunity. She took the sheriff's gun and radio to eavesdrop. Casey realized that for the hackers, cracking the code was only a matter of time. Currently, all communication devices were without signal. But when Casey stepped outside, she noticed the hackers were still using their computers. Will figured out that they were using a dedicated satellite system. So the two decided to destroy the only signal station there, cutting off the hackers' network connection. But the storm winds were getting stronger. Will braved the gale with a cable to climb the signal tower. At any moment, the fierce winds could have swept him away. He secured the cable tightly to the tower. Then he shouted loudly, telling Casey to pull the cable to topple the signal tower. At that moment, the gang's car arrived. But while operating, she accidentally turned on the lights. It was practically saying, "I'm here." The male lead was truly desperate at this point. This move caught the gang's attention on their car. A fierce gunfight broke out. Casey was lucky to shoot and kill the female driver. The car went out of control and crashed into a nearby gas station. That woman turned out to be Perkins' lover. He went mad and vowed to kill the female lead. Meanwhile, Casey reversed the car and pulled down the signal tower inside the treasury. The hacker was struggling to crack the code. At the critical moment, only one final number remained to be cracked. But the signal tower lost connection. The final number froze. The hackers were fuming with anger. They were seconds away from fully cracking the vault code. Still, only one pair of numbers remained. It wasn't hard to figure out. But if they got it wrong, the vault would be locked for 48 hours. That would render all their efforts useless. Since the cable was still stuck to the tower and couldn't be removed, Will told Casey to untie the cable while he dealt with the gang. But how could he handle them with no weapon? He saw a disc brake cover being blown by the storm at high speed. So Will decided to use it as a weapon against the gang. The gang underestimated this rudimentary weapon. But not long after, one gang member got impaled by the brake disc. With the storm intensifying, the remaining two retreated. The two got into the car and drove away from the scene. Elsewhere, the sheriff was rescued by his men. The police escorted him back to the treasury. But the two sides disagreed on splitting the loot. The sheriff wanted to keep the entire $600 million for himself. The police planned to take down Perkins' group to eliminate witnesses. But they underestimated Perkins' ruthlessness. Perkins swiftly sent the sheriff to his maker. He then bribed the sheriff's men, promising each of them $20 million after the job was done. The allure of money made the two sides continue their cooperation. Casey used the radio to contact the gang. They planned to use the code as bait to launch a counterattack. Casey told them to bring Breeze to the shopping mall for a hostage exchange. Will found a flare gun in a cabinet. Moments later, the crooked cops arrived at the mall. Plaintext. While the two sides were negotiating, Will kept a close eye on the wind conditions outside. He then warned Casey about the approaching storm. Right after, he used a flare gun to shatter the glass ceiling of the mall. The swirling wind suddenly sucked everything inside into the storm. Luckily, both had tied themselves to safety ropes. Breeze seized the window frame to keep himself safe. The unprepared police officers were sucked into the storm. After both fell onto the rooftop, objects were flying everywhere. They could be hit at any moment. They tightly gripped the ropes and jumped to the ground. Casey planned to turn a car into a bomb and crash it into the treasury. She described that the car needed to be waterproof and bulletproof. Will thought, sounds reasonable. But where do we find a car like that? Casey didn't answer but glanced at his armored vehicle. Wait, I don't think this plan is a good idea. As they collected fertilizer to make a bomb, Perkins' henchmen relentlessly tracked them down. Outside, the storm officially made landfall, bringing a tsunami that overturned giant cargo ships at the port. Within moments, seawater flooded their location. The gang members couldn't escape and were swept away. In the chaos, Will grabbed a buoy. He climbed onto his armored vehicle to escape the floodwaters. But Casey wasn't as lucky. She was personally captured by Perkins. Upon returning to the treasury, he used her colleague to force her to open the vault. With no other option, Casey complied. She went to the pile of papers and retrieved the iPad. Turns out, it had been there all along, unnoticed by the gang. After running all over the town and losing several comrades, they finally opened the vault. Then he shot and killed Casey's colleague. But he decided to keep her alive for prolonged torment. The gang loaded $600 million onto 3 container trucks and left. Meanwhile, Breeze arrived by boat to rescue Will. He told him that Casey had been taken by the gang. The two brothers then returned home to plan her rescue. First, they decided to recharge their energy to stay warm. For these brothers, when words fail, it's time to bring out the guns. At this point, sunlight had returned outside. It was the eye of the storm, spanning about 40 miles. It looked like a bright sunny day in the middle of hell. The two brothers hid on the rooftop of a nearby building, observing the thieves' movements. With his years of military experience, Breeze decided to take a smaller vehicle and use a shortcut to follow the money truck. The edges of the storm were quickly approaching. The EF5 tornado relentlessly ravaged the ground. Casey had already spotted the two brothers' car tailing the truck. Elsewhere, the hacker couple was driving a truck. The two decided to get cozy to kill time. Unbeknownst to them, the brothers had climbed into the truck bed. Breeze nearly fell onto the road as he jumped. Eventually, both safely climbed onto the truck roof. What followed was a spectacular truck hijacking. The couple, distracted by their affection, noticed nothing. Suddenly, they were startled out of their bliss. The girlfriend screamed at the top of her lungs. The hacker pulled out a gun from his pants. But, unlucky for him, Breeze shot him in the arm. That's what he got for being reckless while driving. The brothers quickly subdued the couple. Afterward, Will climbed onto the second truck. Casey taunted one of the gang members in the truck. The two quickly got into a brawl. "I've had enough of you." She grabbed a gun and shot the driver. As a result, the truck veered off the highway. Will quickly opened the door, taking over the driver's seat. The truck was about to crash into a massive concrete block. Will managed to swerve the wheel just in time, successfully saving the truck from disaster. At a sharp turn, as the truck bounced, Casey used the momentum to eject the thug out of the truck. The two trucks continued to chase after Perkins. Another intense gunfight broke out. At first, Perkins had the upper hand. He managed to suppress Breeze. But as soon as Will arrived, the situation shifted. In the end, one truck couldn't outmatch two. Perkins was hit, with a bullet grazing his shoulder. Meanwhile, the terrifying storm loomed closer. The brothers skillfully coordinated, repeatedly ramming Perkins' truck. Injured and unable to dodge, Perkins started losing control. Repeated collisions caused him to lose control and fall behind. He tried to maneuver around them, But the brothers kept forcing him toward the edge. Looking in the rearview mirror, Perkins saw the storm right behind him. Realizing the danger, he desperately tried to clear a path. But the storm snatched the money container away. The entire $200 million was swept away in seconds. Frustrated, Perkins realized there was nothing he could do. Seeing him futilely chasing the container, fate returned the money container to him. However, one of the two trucks broke down. If we don't hurry, you'll meet your ancestors. Will slowed down to let Breeze jump onto his truck. Thanks to ancestor blessings, Breeze managed to escape in time. However, the couple in the other truck wasn't as fortunate. They didn't make it onto Will's truck in time. Seconds later, they were swept up into the sky by the whirlwind. In a nail-biting situation, Will stepped on the gas, speeding forward with all his might. The storm appeared, its sinister face howling madly, just like the tornado from years ago. Finally, Will overcame his psychological shadows and defeated the ferocious storm. Casey posed a question. Right now, I have 2 teammates and $200 million. And no one knows about it. What do you think about turning the truck around and heading straight to Mexico? Wow, sounds good. I think it's a great idea. That's the end of the movie. If you enjoyed it, give me a like. And leave a comment sharing your thoughts about the movie. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on my latest movie summaries. See you next time, my dear friends.